Hello.
Yeah. So,
Which does account for the, in 2019, spending the 375?
It was 116 that we were over last year. Is that what you're talking about? Oh,
The electric. We was talking about something.
oh, transfer.
So in other words, is
If you look at the electric utility and look at the projections for 2019,
yeah,
that's the projections to transfer at the end of this
the
year.
schedule of transfers.
Yes. Well, no, not, well, yes, the schedule of transfers as well. But I was looking at.
But so are we funding, the potential funding of the 375 is in 19?
Some of it's some of it's what's already in that, plus whatever we transferred this year.
So we can fund it partially in 19 and partially in 20.
We can fund it all in 19. Let me go get, I know what you're asking for. Let me go get that.
I'd called and warned Scott about this, but realized with Angela being out, I don't know if she sounded an email her out or anything, but it's been really confusing for her to get the right numbers. She just finally got a confirmation that there was a $30,000 mistake in the tax thing. So we're at kind of a disadvantage. We normally have at least a week's look at this thing before this meeting, so it might require a little more than this meeting to get it nailed down. That was our discussion today, and I talked to Scott about it just because I haven't had a look at it.
Well, we definitely don't want to rush into this.
I'll hand it out to you. And let me show you what I'm talking about. This amount in capital improvement is what we have right now. And then this page, we have that scheduled for this year to go into capital improvement. So next year, we're not going to have anything.
Without some other cut or revenue.
Yes, and I looked all weekend for someplace we could cut, but, you know better where we could cut. I couldn't find anything.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and call the budget meeting to order. So I guess I'm going to let you and JR start explaining some of this, which sounds like you might not be able to get it all done tonight because of the information that we have. But I'll let you guys go through it and try to follow along.
Okay. We're better off than we thought we were going to be earlier, because part of the problem that with the draft budget that I got from Angela was the ad valorem tax was wrong. And I felt like it was wrong, but I needed them to confirm that it was wrong before I could move forward with trying to provide input. And she did let me know, not Angela, she's on vacation, but another auditor called me and let me know that my calculations were actually correct, and that got us about $30,000 more than what she had originally had for our taxes. So that helped. So, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead with whatever, I guess. The primary subject to me is the electric fund.
Yes.
And that's something that we're starving ourselves completely out
Yes.
trying to do that, so that would be a matter of revenue adjustment, but go ahead with what you have as far as everything getting to that point.
Okay.
That we need to try to fund.
So, part of the place that we had to cut, we had projected 3 full-time employees, 1 police officer and 2 for elsewhere. We really can't afford to do that. That was one of the places that we cut for the health insurance. So we eliminated 1, and we can still do it. We can still do 2 full-time employees and pay health insurance for them. And this is projecting that the employees we hire have families. They have the family coverage, and there's something else. Full-time employees, they have families. Can't remember what I was going to say, but for that, the amount of that, we had to budget $225,000 for that to cover our current employees plus 2 new ones if we hire them. Another place that we can afford to get 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time. So I guess the council needs to maybe decide if that one of the full-time still needs to stay in the police department, or if that, where are those 2 employees best utilized? And then the part-time employee, where is that employee best utilized? And that would be these guys. I don't know. I mean, that's not, but that's what we can do right now without any changes. So I want to point out what he's talking about I'll point this out first. On the general fund on page 8, and then on page 8A, I should have highlighted this for you guys, but you'll see about halfway down the page on page 8 the rec commission disbursement, and that is coming in and going out. So we budget that high because it just increases our budget authority so that we can pay it out no matter how much we get. So that's probably higher than we're actually going to get in the taxes, but we want it to be high enough so that we can pay everything to the rec commission or to the PBC no matter what we get. So it doesn't affect the bottom line of the budget because it's the same thing coming in on the revenue as going out on the expenses down below. It's exactly the same. So you'll see $176,000 this year and $180,000 next year. But again, it's probably not going to be that much. Does that make sense why we do it that way? Okay. I'll just point this out. As I was working through all the numbers this weekend on the property cleanup line item that we have, that could be in a place where you could fund that tree removal that we're talking about. That would be really probably the place to do it from, because I can't really see any place else. It's not a capital improvement thing, so that would be a potential place to grab that money from. So that's kind of why that's still there. We had to cut some other things to make that still be there, but let's see, going on to what he was talking about, if you go over to page, the electric fund doesn't have a page number on it, so flip through till you see electric and water utility on the top.
What page is it?
There's no page number.
That's page 10.
It looks like it would be page 11.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, so the general fund, as you already know, is funded by the ad valorem tax and then transfers from other funds. transfers from our electric fund or our other revenue-generating funds. That's where all the money comes from for our general fund. Ad valorem taxes and some other taxes we get some sales tax. All those things and I can go back to that and show you, all those things are listed out where we get our revenue from, but the bulk of it comes from those two. So we can't not do transfers to the general fund. That has to happen because that's where that's funded. So if you notice on here, in 2019, we've got, down near the bottom, we've got 3 transfers that are going to happen, hopefully happen this year, assuming that we have enough money in the utility fund to do them. The priority one will be the general fund, and then the other 2 will be if we have the funds to do them, which we should, based on the projections for this year, we should be able to do both of those transfers. But then you'll notice in 2020 we don't have anything, and that's because we're running out of cash. Over the last 7 years or so, we haven't increased our utility rates since 2012, and I'll just throw that out there. So over the years, the expenses have continued to increase, but our revenue has not, proportionately. So we're now, my opinion, and JR can affirm this or not, my opinion is that we are now at a place where, we're in a little bit of a pickle because of that. We can't transfer anymore to capital improvement or equipment reserve based on our current projections.
And basically, those transfers will fund a portion of the electric work that we've talked about, not completely. There's basically 450,000 of the, and that's if you use absolutely everything available towards the electric utility, the improvements. We know in 2021, at the end of that year, revenue will change, but we're about to either come to a point where you do it and be cash starved for an entire year, or we offset utility rates knowing that we're going to have an offset in utility expenses at the end of 2021. So it's kind of a bridge, if you will. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I would certainly not be in a position of waiting on doing the electrical improvements. That, to me, is a must-do. But this is the point of why it's not just automatic, going forward, just doing it. I mean, the cash is not there currently. It is. But it won't be if we do it all in the 1 year. I don't have my estimate here from the RBW engineering. Wasn't it 525 or 525?
525 for everything.
So an engineer's estimate is usually high, and this is right at the level of doing that. I almost wonder if we don't let that go to bid at the entire project. You find the engineer's estimate can be 20-30% high if you find the right contractor. I still want to press that we starve ourselves down if that's what we have to do to get that work done. We know we're going to have a year of nothing as far as cash to go back into the electric, but we know it's coming the year after. That's completely separate from the street, the vote, and all that thing. But that, to me, is the big deal with what we're talking about with this budget is, do we want to take the city's finances up to that edge?
That would leave nothing left for anything else.
And it's truly nothing. I mean, it really is. It would be a strange new territory for us. I mean, when you drop,
Yes.
when you drop $450,000 on a project, that's what it does. That's just the level that the city operates at.
And you talked about splitting it into 2 phases. The first phase is totally doable and still leave a little bit in capital improvement.
The problem is your cost goes up when you make 2 projects out of 1. And that's where I think that the bidding it with the option, a portion being the option might be the way to go. Because if we come in, say it's way high, say we come in at $380,000, then we can fund that within a single project. But if you break them into 2 years, you're going to add 20-30%. Doing more. That's a weird thing to try to say. Let's go broke, but we will bridge the gap. I don't know whether, I don't even know what the city has as options to run up to that fine line as far as borrow finance. I don't know what
Well,
we
then,
can even do.
I don't know.
I mean, that's an auditor question, but this is what we didn't have an answer for before tonight, because she was still trying to get our, a true budget in front of us. But I would just continue to press that we do everything we can to do that first phase, or 1-2 phase, whether we split it as much of the electric as we can at the cost of all else.
What do we have on cash on here?
Well, so we have like that's on this here that I sent out. 1.288 currently, and it's split out between all those funds. Some of it's in CDs, some of it's in cash in different accounts in the bank, but this is the total that we have. And all of these are operating amounts for each of those funds. Oh, I should have printed out the budget. I sent out the budget. I can give you guys the budget one every first meeting of the month. And that's important to look at as well, where we're at as far as these balances that you show in each of the funds. But this is based on what was budgeted for 2019. So you can't rob from this one and give to this one without hurting this one.
And we've never been in this place, by the way, where we're talking about a potential shift in our revenue that's as significant as the potential contract coming forward. I mean, it's almost like you're spending it before you get it thinking, but at the same time, to wait 1 year, 2 years, before that is detrimental to our situation as well.
Is there any grant funding out there?
On electric is extremely difficult. That usually involves a broke city with lots of debt and no other way to do it. And unfortunately, I think that overlaps us.
Maybe I'm unclear on the answer to my question. What is our value on our CDs?
So I want to say 517,000 in CDs right now. And then the balance of that is in our operating funds that we use to pay bills and whatever. But yeah, that's how much we have in CDs. If we do this project, we'll have to cash some of those in to pay for it.
And the city has to maintain cash. You can't go to a zero level cash. I mean, operating to pay the bills and everything. There's no, when we say we'll have nothing, it means we'll have nothing but the money to operate.
And then we're
the
going to have
fixed cost of that.
we're going to really have to watch our spending. Some departments won't be able to like they have, and things like that, and we may not get the new employees that we need. We're going to have to watch what we spend.
We're on the threshold of doing 2 giant projects.
Mhm.
So,
I feel like it's a stumble not to go forward with the electric at the heaviest way possible, though, because the actual revenue that shifts it, so that under normal circumstances, we would do what we could afford to do. We would raise a utility rate hoping to fund that forward, but we know we have a projection coming. It's just unfortunate it's 2 years away. That's where it leaves us in the situation where I would like to see us budget everything we can to the electric and bid that optionally to trim it down. And Lila's going to go against that, because I know it empties the coffers. I do. I understand that. But I think the budget ability needs to be there as if we're going to do that, and we can cut back if we need to. I mean, it can make it fluid, but that's my highest priority, I guess.
And all of these current transfers are banking on the money being there at the end of the year. Last year, we weren't able to transfer as much as was budgeted because it wasn't there.
So as it relates to revenue, the Prairie Land Bill's doing a projection. It's pretty static. It's really, there isn't a lot of difference from 18 to 19 in the first 6 months. That's always can vary some based on market energy, those kind of things, but for the most part, I don't want to say it's steady as she goes, but there shouldn't be a drastic change in our expenses in that time period. we do have the option to raise the utility rate. I'm just reluctant to suggest that at this point with our projected revenue shift that's coming. You don't want to raise something and back it off. You follow what I'm saying. It seems like a knee-jerk to do that. It's just, I'd rather run us up to a level where, oh no, now we have to raise the rate as opposed to doing it as part of it. If that makes sense. So, I mean, we're going to speak in odds on this, and I'm completely aware of that. But I do understand the cash, they're running us too low as well.
Are you adamant to invest in 2 years, that's going to change? No doubt about it.
They have, the history's there, the long-term contracts are there. The next meeting will put that in place. That we can actually sign contracts now that nail down the price for that at the contract time.
Why can't we rely on our CDs?
Okay, so that's a different, we're going to have to pay for it, but that has nothing to do with the balance of our capital improvement fund and the money that can go into our capital improvement fund. That's the maximum right now was just a little less than $450,000 in the capital improvement fund.
So yes, you will be cashing them, but you still have to have an account that has roughly $300,000 in it, I assume. Like if there's a floating balance on that one account that you pay the expenses primarily out of, right? I realize that it involves several funds, but that one actually fluctuates significantly as the revenue comes in. You all of a sudden lose the CD flexibility, which means that one actually should have another $100,000 or something there for that sunflower this or that something, that's the surprise thing. That's what you're taking away from it. But yeah, we will be cashing in probably most of, if not all of the CDs to do the work.
How much would we have to raise rates?
Half a cent, $50,000 on the electric. Water, I'll have to do some projections to figure out where we could come up with money. I mean, we have done that before, where we did part of it in the electric and the rest of it in the other utilities. I mean, water's always been my favorite target just because we're low there. But we can... If we have to go that route, we can. The issue is that knowing the revenue shift is coming.
But it's not there yet.
But it's not there yet.
It's like spending what we don't have.
That's exactly right.
But you're not talking long-term about dropping the electrical rates when this change does happen.
Absolutely not. It all goes back into the electric system. The entire goal is to put that maximum amount towards that. I mean, and this is where we run into, this is a weird budget here because we have these big ticket items going on. If the sales tax bill, if the bonds, we're able to raise bonds, that's going to take a burden that has been weighing us down over the last period of time. We've been spending money out of capital improvement to offset street costs for quite a few years. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes right down to it. The electric is a known. That, in my opinion, it's a known that we're going to have more revenue from it, and that's where that money needs to go. The question is, do we wait till we have that money before we take the first step? And that's the budget. That's what we're talking about today, is whether the electric is everything. Do we pull back the reins on everything else so we can try to do that, and then it'll be 2 years prior to seeing the contracts in place that allow us to do that. And I don't know whether there's any bridge gaps as far as borrowing. I don't know what the city can do without issuing bonds as far as if it was necessary. If we just say we're going to budget that $450,000 towards the electric, it doesn't mean we have to do the whole spending. I just want the ability to do that, the maximum amount towards that, which pulls back the reins on everything.
And that's already in there, because that's 2019's budget.
Is it feasible for that project to all be done in the year 2020?
I think it would, yes. Yes. In fact, we're getting to a point now where 19, we'd probably be just encumbering it for 20 at this point. I think we maybe have a month or It just depends. I mean, that's weather dependent. I think we'd be doing that in 2020.
So if you did it in phases, what are the actual, what's the spending going to? What are you spending the 450 on and for whatever?
So the 375, 350, and I wish I had the numbers in front of me, is that feeder 3. That's the larger one that runs on the north side of town, runs a one spur that goes all the way through the residential area to the power plant. That's 375. The other one is 180,000. I'm just throwing numbers, but that's feeder 1. That's just the south side of Main Street, just the commercial feeder. That's why it's significantly less. It's just significantly less area.
So what is the 375 paid for? Like, is it doing new poles for the whole route?
Poles,
New
transformers,
lines?
removing secondary, yes.
Transformers.
It's a rebuild.
Total rebuild. Same with the other project then?
Yeah, now total rebuild isn't quite true. There are good poles, there are good transformers, but yes, it's going through and addressing every perceived weak spot. It would bring it to a standard that would say, we shouldn't be doing anything on this, shy of a tornado or, extremely excessive situation. It should bring it to the standard we want to bring them all to.
If you did just the first project,
Mm-hmm.
and I realize that putting off the second half, the cost is going to increase, but so is our money that's coming in.
Sure.
It just seems to me to make more sense to not run ourselves, in my opinion.
So my backup plan is we do the most expensive one. And I mean, that's why we have to have the conversation. I want it all done, but if we're not going to do it all, the 375, the feeder 3 must be done. That's our problematic one. That is the one that is, and that's not to say one won't shift into the, that takes the next worst position as a priority.
Where does that run?
So feeder 3, it runs from the power plant, it runs up River Street, and it runs behind in the alley, behind the north side of Main Street, and then there's a spur between Spencer and Webster that runs all the way to the other end of town to College. There's some minor things off of it, but that's its primary location.
That's the most problematic.
Currently.
And do you think if we just did that one, that if we did bids, it might be 300?
That's the reason I want the ability I want to push forward to go forward with the bidding, because if it came in a reasonable rate, that we would want to do it. Because money could be available for that one the next year, but there's that 20% you leave on the, potentially, that you leave on the table for doing a smaller project, and for not combining and making a single larger one, which units become cheaper, just like anything else.
That's the two things that the public's been after us for a long time. And that's the reason why we're in this position. It's just so much money to fix streets and do electrical and do everything.
But I think that the explanation is in the numbers of why we don't have new streets and new electric. I mean, we're talking about actually emptying it out to try to do the one step of things that is a priority.
I wonder, if we took the big step and did it all, how long would it take for us to recover any of that?
I think our actual recovery comes when we get into new contract with KMDA,
In 2 years.
because there's so many moving parts with the sales tax and the bond issue, because that would help by 50 to 75, and that's
Right.
This is a pie in the sky number, but a 50 to 75,000 annually, because I know we've thrown significant capital improvements, which actually it's quite a bit more than that.
For what?
Street work. How much we've been offsetting out of utility fund and capital improvements towards it has been quite
Has
significant.
been.
So there wouldn't be any coming out of that.
Exactly. I mean, that's the...
We would just have to significantly watch our spending in all other areas, everywhere. raises for our employees probably, just everywhere. We would just have to really watch our spending if we do this whole thing.
2 years.
Yeah.
And I think we leave the budget as it is, and we can, our spending will be based on the bids.
On the bids.
Place it out there, the entire project, as in A, that we hope definitely comes in low enough to do, and if B and A equals a number that is palatable, then we can take that funds, at least if we budget it this way.
But it'd have to be less than 447,000.
Yes. Yeah, that's my point, is that
Yeah.
engineers' estimates are always, I mean, they always try to be significantly high, to let you know what your budget number is, but
And even that is not that's not a known number. That's kind of still,
of course,
And once the bids come in, do we have a chance to back out then?
Yes.
Change course?
yes. And that's why I'm saying, instead of just saying we want to go ahead with all based on the engineer estimate, we want to split it in two based on the engineer's estimate of A, which is our priority, the feeder 3, and then there's a secondary, an additional bid item or units that would be B, feeder 1. And then we make the decision at that time.
Who do you think would be bidding on it?
To get a list of contractors that do specific in Allenwood. And then, of course, it would be public as well.
we can, and I'll throw this out there, JR. We can move funds around, like the money that's in the equipment reserve. That can be transferred back to utility and then back to capital improvement. You can do that. What's currently supposed to go into equipment reserve could go to capital improvement. So there's those options as far as the moving of the funds, and that would give us more.
And that's exactly what I'm saying, is we want to, I think we go forward with knowing the intention of funding, if the bids come in, right?
Do you have any anticipation of any major expenses in down there? Like, we're not going to have to buy a trash truck,
No, I mean, we have the equipment reserve, that's where our money is, and I guess where we at on the equipment reserve.
We've got about 163,000 in there, and talking about equipment reserve, I told Dan I would bring this up, and I'm just going to bring it up now while I'm thinking about it. So as not to impact his budget in the general fund, and this makes sense to me to allow him to purchase things that he needs, like bunker gear, out of equipment reserve. And he's talking $6,000 a year for every year to replace 2 bunker gears every year. That's really pretty minimal. He was very concerned about it, but I feel like that's a reasonable request.
Yeah. So the equipment reserve usually is a lot, we like to have more there, because equipment is high. The only thing, there's a couple small items, we're always looking at rollover mowers, that's about $10,000. The backyard digger, which is that item that's, because our digger is too big, we currently have that at $70,000. That was in 18 that we had that budget. I've never been able to find the right one. Those are actually much higher dollar, but you can find them used with reasonable hours at some point in time. They can be done without for this period of time. That's not, I would say it's a bad idea, but at some point we have 2 bucket trucks. If we didn't have the backup one, the large one that's too large for our work, I would say we need a bucket truck next year. But because we have it as a backup, my thinking is that equipment reserve money is, I'd much rather look at it next year than this year, if at all possible, just because there's that cushion for trying to get there if you end up having to. But yes, we can, the equipment, the 5-year plan is where the equipment is that we put the expenses into can be shoved significantly.
As far as that digger goes, and other pieces of equipment like that, could that be something that's hired out if we do get into the jam?
It's almost always the small ticket item. I mean, it's the pole that breaks because of the wind. It's the,
You could hire out a mower if you absolutely got a real jam.
well, a $10,000 mower is a lot different than a $70,000
Oh, yeah.
digger, which is something that, you know, we need based on the equipment split we have is oversized for what we do, like the bucket truck is. So, they remember something from long ago about that bucket truck. Yeah, hiring it out on short notice is probably not feasible, but dealing with what we have is. I mean, we could lease something as opposed to buying it. That would be a better option, rent or lease something for a period of time. Say our digger there, it goes south and it's like, oh no, we need a new one. Well, we can get into a lease program or rental agreement for a period of time if we have to. That saves us from doing the big ticket item. So we have some ability there.
And I know you mentioned this right off the bat, but how much room do we have in this budget for new help?
Currently, not doing that. If we did just the project, 370,000 that we actually have funds for, next, we have room for 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time addition, depending on the salary that is decided. But we keep it in line with what the current wages are.
Because I don't want to walk this in and not being able to hire somebody.
Mhm.
I would,
Pretty fair assessment.
honestly, and take it as rude or whatever, but if I had 2 reasonably good employees in front of me, I would insist on hiring them over the police getting a person. I'm just going to tell you that right now. We need people.
Probably too.
But we can't do that if we're going to do the whole 525,000. Yeah, I'm just.
But I want that to be the going forward wish list, and that can be part of the decision once we get the bids.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, we say, okay, we're going to be that shorthanded, we're going to do the whole thing, or we want to maintain the ability to hire 2 people and the cutback
If we went forward with the whole thing, could we hire 1 full-time employee?
I didn't crunch those numbers.
Is that right? That would get another guy on the police force sometime.
He will need to know that if that's the route you're going, because he's still pursuing a full-time officer, I guess. I have not seen any applications come in. So.
That's what you said last meeting.
Have you had any applicants?
I've actually pursued people at a couple levels trying to get something built.
I would think, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, that we could probably do 1. Probably.
Well, the luck we've been having, get 2's like the pie in the sky.
But it would just be 1, not 1 for each. Yeah.
JR, how much of a difference in pricing is it if we don't buy everything all at once? And we do it in 2 phases?
I actually discussed that with them. I mean, it could be significantly higher because your second project, because I made it clear the bigger one was the priority.
Yeah.
So the second one is a smaller number. So your mobilization, all unit prices go up more on that. Does that make sense? The smaller the project, the more it is per unit of work. There's just not the revenue forward. What I've thought about is if we could do the 375 and do the 180 the next year, maybe if we had enough money, we could make that project larger. But then again, there you go back to your spending money before you got it. But I don't know the actual percentage. It's, you know, the alternative being doing nothing. No, that's not an alternative in my mind at all.
We can't do that.
I think we have to look at this as if we're, without a doubt, doing Peter Drew, the budget number that we're doing, and we'll get bids and hope that we can squeeze part of that in, or hit the high, maybe we can hit just the highest priorities of one to buy the 2 years. You know what I mean? Instead of doing all of it, because once they're here, it's a unit price. It's not all or nothing on the second
So can we do the first feed of three and buy the equipment for the other feed?
No, you would want the contractor doing the work, so they're gonna
No,
supply.
I mean just buy the equipment, and then they come back later and do the work. Is that where,
They supply all the equipment, because what they do is they mark it up if you supply it anyway, and if they supply their own material, then it's at their own head. So the material is part of the contract for them to supply. So, yeah. So a unit is a pole or is a transformer, so the 375 comes in at 300, and say you want to stick to the 375, so you get $75,000 worth of units and hit the highest priorities of feeder one.
yeah.
That would be the way I would look at that, because it's the exact same thing, it's just across the street. So
Right.
that's not going to, as much as you can, if we can, and that's just all based on bids.
Basically, I mean, the AR's wanting to go for the whole thing, but once we get the bids, we might be back or off of there and just do the one feed, 370.
When do you think the bids will be in?
We were into a middle of November start time, by delaying until July 22nd, if I remember right. I think it's November start.
So this doesn't really affect the budget that we have for 2020, because we don't have any transfers going on except for the general fund. So this decision doesn't really affect the budget. It'll just affect what we do moving forward next year, spending-wise. And Angela has not looked at this budget, so when she gets back Wednesday, I'll be going over with her, making sure she doesn't see any issues with it, but I don't think she will, because we're not exceeding our tax split or anything that would cause
So
concern.
a question I would have, and maybe this is odd or maybe it's not, but what is our fallback position for a city with financing if you do run up to the edge? Is there any short-term lending that's a reasonable enough rate that's considerable, or is it just stick within your financial guidelines? Because if it is, that would change my mind a little bit as to pressing forward. We can't get to a point where we back ourselves completely on the line.
I'll
But
find
I
out.
want to do everything we can.
Now, to be clear here, I'm looking on the last page. Basically, the mill levy's dropping almost a mil. Is that correct?
Well, I didn't look at that. Let's look here. And that could be because the rate's higher. If you look at
4.36 is estimated tax rate. Last year it was 45.169. Is that the mill levy?
yeah, hold on here. I was looking at the calculation page. What's more important than that is not exceeding the tax lid, and that's where these calculations come in.
Yeah, because we're not exceeding the tax rate, it's dropping.
That doesn't directly correlate to
It
that.
does not.
The tax lid is on the actual budget you're spending. So if your mill levy is lower, then essentially you're getting less money per mill, money generated, so you're essentially paying more. I mean, if your budget's X and your mill levy comes in lower, then the mill levy really
So your valuation fluctuation plays into your bid? Is that what it is?
Look at
the
the
valuation does not, so the difference in the mill levy, it doesn't matter. The tax lid is on
Okay.
your spending.
the second page.
So, the fluctuation in the mill levy really doesn't have anything to do with.
So look at the second page, and it'll show how the tax lid, what's your maximum tax that you can, dollar-wise, that you can levy.
So the tax rate is based on a dollar.
Yes.
It's on the budget, not
Right.
on the mill levy.
Not on the mills. And it's
I always thought it was the mill levy. So
Yeah, no.
It's based on, so that 297, that was what we levied last year. So they take that as the base, and then they do calculations here on the left based on, like, what it says, new improvements. You can see what everything they take into consideration here in valuation, and we get all, obviously that's from the county. And then the 1.5 is the consumer price index that you're allowed to increase. And based on all those calculations, this number down here is how much dollar-wise you can increase over what you did last year. So we add those two together, and then you turn to the next page, and there's other adjustments that can be made, and I will say this, because Amanda asked me about this. There are ways that you can exclude your emergency services like law enforcement and fire, but it has to be, my understanding from what I found out after talking with you, is it has to be a certain percentage of your overall budget, and I don't think ours would meet that to be an exception, but that's something we can look into next year. But for right now, we don't get any exceptions for budgeting either one of those. Those are just part of our general fund. And so that's it. And then on the next page, you add your library levy, because we levy that for the library, and that total computed tax, that is, we can't go over that. So it was $343,939. That is the maximum without having to go to a vote. And then if you go back to the first page, this number down here typically would be that amount, but we subtracted the 116 from last year off of that. So does that make sense, Roger?
No, I didn't know it was that complicated. The tax lid.
It's a pain.
So aside from the big ticket items, this budget would fund all of our normal things like the senior center and the local development. I mean, nothing, we didn't take out anybody that we would normally fund senior center.
That's correct. And we left the $1,500 for each of those domestic violence places that you donate to, so those were left the same. So none of that changed. Those are places you could change, but none of that has changed in our budget.
In reality, beyond our discussion, I haven't had time to look at this line item by line item, to go through it. And it's my opinion, beyond our discussion here, is that we do that. Angela will be back on Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's a suggestion of raising revenue, we're kind of married to that project that decides whether we go to that to the edge or not, which can be done based on the bid.
Well, I'd be for doing the whole project. If it takes us to the edge, if it takes us over the edge, that's stupid.
And I would agree. I would agree with you to a point if we have the ability for short-term cash. The short-term cash thing is a big deal, in my opinion, because if you take and have nothing but your operating money, that's not responsible unless we have short-term access to cash.
Yeah, because what if something
I wouldn't be
happens?
comfortable with that at all.
And this will take our CDs.
Well, it'll take whatever the dollar amount is. We have $517,000 in our CDs, but we also have another bank account with just cash in its flow that's got about $500,000 in it, and some of that's used for operating, but some of it's, I would say probably half of that could be used for this project, so we wouldn't have to drain all our CDs, but probably, $300,000 worth of them.
Well, I'd be interested to see what the bids come in at, but I hate to back off myself, my opinion.
Especially if it's 20-30% more than next year. To finish the second phase, that just bites you really hard then too, because that's 20% of $180,000.
Like you said, I think it's pretty clear. People are tired of this crap. They want some streets, some select improvement.
But if we run it too tight, and then something else happens and we don't have the money for it. I'm agree though, if we have options available where we could get money if the need became, then I would be more
We don't
personally
want to talk
agreeable
about
to
where
this.
the money comes from when we need the money. We want
Right.
to talk money before we
Yeah, right.
And that's all I'm getting at. If that kind of thing is available, then I would maintain the pressure to do this.
I'd be more
much
comfortable with it as
possible.
well. I'm not comfortable with it the other way, but I would be if we could do that.
And like, health insurance is budgeted for 2019 at 180, 2020, 226,000,
Yes.
46,000. Is that subject to increases or what?
So that projection is for I only made one copy of this, but I'll just hold it here. That projection is based on 2 full-time employees and a 5% increase. We've been very lucky that they have not increased it, but you have to plan for that. So these amounts, I'll just put it here, you guys can pass it around. These kind of give you an idea of where the health insurance is, if we don't have anybody. And I kind of just went middle of the road, 5%, and new employees.
If it was including new people.
Yeah, and,
And are we still going by the old rule of we're going to cap it at 250,000?
I mean,
Insurance, that was before, I think.
Probably none of them
That was a
were
long
on here when we did that.
We decided a long time ago that we would try to not let it go exceed $250,000.
There for a while, health insurance was just jumping like you couldn't believe. I mean, we was talking 10, 15% increases several years in a row that were hitting us. And it has leveled out really nice, so
yeah,
knock on wood.
yeah.
So anything over then would go to the employees.
So we'd have to get
That's what,
rebids.
that was the consensus at that time, but that doesn't bind this council to that decision.
It should be a budget thing, and if and if it's looking like the numbers aren't going to work, then you're going to have to figure out the health insurance and get bids elsewhere.
You said that 226 was for adding how many?
2 new employees. 2 full-time employees, and that's assuming that they have family coverage. That's the maximum that it would be for 2 employees and a potential 5% increase.
And you've got that in this budget,
Yes,
226.
yes, for next year, yes.
But if we're going to decide on this to go to the max, we need to tell Darrell that he maybe needs to back off on interviewing anybody right at the moment until we know where we.
Well, then you need to decide if the 2 employees, one there and one there, or it'd be better to have 2 of them there and a part-time there. I mean, this budget would allow for that, or...
Correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen, I think Jared needs one more.
he needs at least one more.
Yeah, right.
What is the police budget?
So this is an interesting one to look at. On page 8B, it breaks it down by department and by salaries. Actual on the left-hand side is the actual salaries for 2018. The middle is what we're projecting for this year, and the right is projections for next year.
And you add in the municipal court, because that's what Matt does, right?
Yeah, he's got a separate section there, so we split some of his out into municipal court, some of his pay and everything. That salaries did eliminate part-time that he wanted. So that budget right there is with the assumption that his overtime is going to go away, that he currently works, Darrell's overtime, which is significant, and no part-time officers, just 1 full-time, and that's what that number is based on. So if you decided to do something different with that and he didn't hire anybody, then since this is all part of the general fund, it could be shifted over to streets or one of the parks or whatever, one of the other general fund departments.
Does this include insurance?
Health insurance? No. Health insurance is a total separate line item. This is just salary. It doesn't even include Medicare and Social Security and all that. Those are separate line items over on the next page. It lists out papers and uniforms, Social Security, all those things are separate and listed separately.
So if we didn't have a police department, we could eliminate $200,000.
You'd probably have to contract with the sheriff's office and pay them something.
And right now, the recycling, are we replacing, or are we, I mean, that's another,
We did budget it to have a person.
a person there,
Yeah.
yeah.
A part-time person,
Right.
yeah. And that's kind of based on,
It's part-time, right?
mhm, yeah. And you can see on the streets, that's significantly more, and that was because we were projecting for an employee, another employee in the streets department. And then over in the electric fund is where the other one was, the other full-time. For his. But we can't do that now. We can either do it there or there. Let's see, there's something else I was going to point out. I mean, you can see across the top on where we show the unencumbered funds, how that's been going down and year after year after year. And I actually made, and I'll send it out to you guys, because that got me curious, how much has it really been decreasing year over year? And I made a spreadsheet that shows back to 2014, all of these gains and where they were at. And you can kind of see where the unencumbered cash has just been going down and down and down, and everything else has just been going up.
You can account some of that for an increased cost on the electric utility market, a significant amount over the last 10 years. It's climbed up with market energy and just the general cost.
And we didn't raise rates.
That's right, but that's where we're going to get a reset.
We have the sewer loan, and if you look on the sewer page, you can see the payments that are made on that, and that's up in 2024, I think.
What is that, 30,000 a year?
Yeah, something like that. I've got it in here. 31,278 a year. So it's not a lot. So we have that, and then the only other thing is the debt service. Well, not really debt service, just the PDP payments, but that's an in and out thing, so we don't have to worry too much about that. We might have to think about something with the sewer fund, though, because
Our sewer, loan retires in about 5 years.
yeah, I think it's 2024, I wanted to say. I'd have to look at it again to see.
No, it says right here, 91.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah, I forgot that was on the debt service page.
So I guess if you pay long enough, you do retire debt. And that is basically the only debt we have. You pay $171,000 a year on that.
On what?
That's sewer bill.
No,
That's the outstanding balance.
we pay like 31,000 something.
Oh, okay, okay.
The 4,027,
in '05, looks like.
Yeah, it seems like that'd be right.
Right now, right? Three issues. Expires September of '24. So, if we had to, can we do something like that again?
So not for electric.
Not for electric.
That's a USDA fund or something, so yeah, they don't have those.
And that had a direct relation to the CDBG grant. That it's eligibility, I guess.
We had to triple our sewer rates at that time.
From
From $1 to $3.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, we heard about it.
No kidding. They used to not charge us,
Yeah.
have any service.
The,
The idea was to make each department at least pay for themselves.
Yeah.
And the sewer proposed 100,000 is for work on the street?
no.
No?
Are you looking at the sewer fund? That transfer,
The 100,000?
that's going to the general fund over on the left-hand side. That's just operating expenses for the general fund. So that's what I was saying, the general fund's funded by all these other funds, electric, sewer, well, those are the two primary ones. So the general fund relies on that. And then the taxes. And a few other things that are listed on the front page, or on the general fund page, that you can see. In fact, I think you asked about sales tax at one time, and if you look at page 8, it lists all the different types of revenue that the general fund gets. Like the motor vehicle tax and the sales tax and all of that. So that's where that's listed at, and you can see what we get from different sources.
Why in 2020 does it not account for the tax revenue?
Because that comes from the calculations. So this is a workbook that does calculations within. So once we have all the other calculations that are made, and you find out you don't exceed your tax bid, then you go in there and you put that amount that's calculated.
But yet with that subtracted, that's the proposed budget year resources available. That would be less.
I'm sorry, what?
Next page, because the proposed budget year, the resources available is less the tax revenue. Okay, tax required, so it subtracts them.
Yes.
That's where it is, okay. I got it. I was different. Yeah. So we're proposed cash tax minus tax revenue, which is then added
Yeah.
to the bottom.
So when we're doing all the calculations and fiddling with the numbers, this number changes constantly, and that was the number I had to give it to.
Thank you, I forgot.
Yeah, you're
The
welcome.
word there, I think I probably asked it. Because it makes it look like you're
Okay, I guess are we ready to turn this over to Lila to give it to Angela to let her look at it and go forward with, we could be spending the max here, but we can also back off if the bids come in too high.
Did you run any what-if scenarios?
As far as,
Well, like if we were to spend all of that and then to see what we would be in 21, if
that's really hard to
With the-
project
we,
year over year.
know if there was any kind of,
I can ask her, but we don't know. I mean, you don't know how things are gonna be at the end of next year. I mean, she could probably go, I don't know, she'd probably charge you for that.
Yeah, that's true.
But I can ask her.
Yeah, I just.
She's going to be, she's even more
Never did
cautious than
anything
I am.
like that before, so that's why I didn't know.
I'm not sure. I'll write it down.
Anything else? Turn it over to Lila and get it sent off to Angela, and then she'll be getting it back to us. We might have to call another special meeting, but maybe not.
You know, if she looks at this and doesn't see any issues with it and understands what it is that you're trying to do, it's probably good to go. Except for you were going to look at it line item by line item.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When does it have to be published by?
So I like to give myself wiggle room, but the absolute latest is August 1st. So I wanted to get it in the 25th, and the reason for that is there have been a couple of instances where the paper didn't get it in. You send it to them and they didn't get it in. And so I'm cautious. I'm a cautious person, and so if that happened on August 1st, then we would be breaking some budget laws by not having the proper length of time between publication and the budget hearing and those things, and when it has to be to the county.
Does that have to be published twice?
No, just once. But you have to allow 10 days. So if we publish it August 1st, you have to allow 10 days for your before your budget hearing. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if you do it on the 12th. But if we don't publish it till the 8th, that'd be the 19th. I'm going to have to double check. I might be lying to you. That might still be all right. That might still be all right, even if we publish it here. But it has something to do with the deadlines that I have to get it to the county. With that all said, I've been told that there aren't any fines or penalties if that happens. It's you get written up in your audit that you had a budget violation, and it goes on your reports, but there aren't any fines associated
Why
with it.
take a chance?
Well, I'm a rule follower, so I don't like to take those chances. But if it if it came down to it, it's not a huge problem. So if we get it in August 1st, we'll be all right.
Is any of this contingent on somebody finding out about the cash reserve contingency? As far as not for the budget?
Not the budget. What we actually spend going forward is that will hinge on that. We're just talking budget. We do that if we decide to.
We used to have some people come in and say, we should never have any money in the CD or the bank. They come in and say, you should be spending it and fixing things and doing something all the time and never have any excess money. Well, that's still wrong to do. If you have a disaster, how
It's
are
scary,
you?
it's scary, but there is people tell.
If it comes down to that, where we are going to do it, we will have to, because we won't know that till these bids come in, and that'll be too late for all of this. So all that means is that we'd have to amend the budget then next year to allow for us to have the budget authority to do it. But that's just amending the budget, which also can be done.
Okay, well, I guess they are still going to crunch the numbers and Lila, and they can send it off to Angela, and then we'll know the next meeting what she's saying.
Unless there's something drastic, yeah, if there's something significant,
Right.
get back with you.
I went through it pretty thoroughly, but without JR's input, and he knows his department's much better than I do, so.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to adjourn the budget meeting? Moved by Amanda, second by Dare, all in favor? Okay, thanks.
Good night.
Good night, thanks.
Is this your copy of the health insurance?
Yes, I mean, you can, somebody